When I was 16, my mom sat me down on the same couch we used to build blanket forts on, and told me I had to leave. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because she had real kids now. That conversation shattered me. What happened next destroyed the last ounce of love I had for her, and years later, when she reappeared at my front door demanding I fund my half-sibling's college tuition, I realized just how deep her betrayal ran. To rewind, my name's Marcus, I'm 32 now, and I've made a life for myself she was never supposed to be part of. But back then, she was my whole world. She was only 21 when she had me, and my father? A ghost. She told me he never wanted to be a dad. They'd only been dating a few months when she got pregnant, and he pieced out the moment she gave him an out. She never pursued child support, said she wanted a clean break. I grew up thinking it was me and her against the world. But maybe it was always just her, and I was a leftover obligation. She eventually met a guy named Ted when I was 8, a junior systems admin at her company, and by the time I turned 11, they were married. We got along well enough. I didn't hate him, but we weren't close. Then, when I was 14, she got pregnant, with twins. Everyone was ecstatic. Me too at first. I thought maybe this was it, the real family. But what actually happened is she drifted further and further from me. Little by little, I became invisible in my own home. During her pregnancy, she was always irritated around me. So I made myself scarce, thinking I was helping. But apparently, not scarce enough. 6 months after the twins were born, she and Ted pulled me into the living room. I remembered the smell of baby formula and the low hum of the washing machine as they told me they just couldn't manage with 3 kids and needed more space. I'd just turned 16. They couldn't legally kick me out, so they framed it as a conversation. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone, Ted said like he was reading off a teleprompter. We want the twins to have the best start in life. That means fewer distractions. Fewer distractions. That was me. I begged. I offered to get a job. I even showed them my grades. I had a 3.8 GPA and dreams of going into architecture. My mom's response? They deserve our full resources, Marcus. You're almost grown. They're just starting. She didn't say I couldn't stay. She said I shouldn't. That night, I left with a duffel bag, my school laptop, and a hollow space where my heart used to live. I crashed with my grandparents, who were kind enough to take me in even though they were barely getting by on retirement. When my mom and Ted would visit them with the twins, they'd talk around me like I was a boarder, not blood. I was furniture with a name. I got a part-time job the month after I moved in. The bus rides were long and the pay was trash, but I didn't want to be a burden. I stopped counting how many nights I came home to see my grandma sleeping in her recliner with a heating pad on her hip, dinner untouched. She never said it, but I knew they were sacrificing for me. So I made a promise to myself, I'd never be dependent on anyone again. And I kept that promise. Every damn day. But the part of the story that hurts the most? It wasn't being pushed out, it was what happened when I finally made something of myself. Because years later, when I thought I'd left the pain behind, she came back. And this time, she wanted more than just space. She wanted money. For them. For the kids who deserved her love more than I ever did. After that night, I stopped waiting for her calls. I stopped checking the mailbox for a birthday card. My mom had made it clear, I was the one she could afford to lose. Living with my grandparents wasn't glamorous. Their 2-bedroom condo already felt cramped with just the 2 of them, and I was sleeping on a pull-out sofa that creaked like it hated me. But for the first time in months, someone actually wanted me there. My grandpa showed me how to change the oil in his rusted Camry. My grandma would pack me leftover meatloaf in old margarine containers. It wasn't much, but it was love. The quiet kind that shows up at 6 a.m. with a thermos of coffee and a ride to your minimum wage job. I worked every spare hour I could, shelving produce at a rundown grocery store, tutoring freshmen who still didn't know where their kidneys were. Anything to help with bills and set something aside. I couldn't lean on my grandparents forever. They were both in their 70s, and I watched them age faster every year. The guilt weighed heavy, but they never made me feel like a burden. Unlike her. When it came time to apply to colleges, I didn't even bother asking my mom for help. She hadn't said a word to me in nearly 2 years. I was 18, legally on my own, and still barely able to afford the application fees. It was one of my uncles, my mom's brother, Uncle Rick, who stepped up. He co-signed my student loan after reading my essay about how I wanted to design sustainable housing for low-income families. Said it hit him hard. I swore I'd never make him regret it. And I didn't. College was brutal. I worked nights washing dishes, sometimes skipped meals to afford textbooks. I once duct-taped my shoes together for 2 weeks before I could afford new ones. I had no safety net. No care packages. Just me, a mountain of debt, and this furious drive to prove I wasn't a mistake. 4 years later, I graduated magna cum laude. My grandparents were there, shaky and proud in the front row. No one else. My mom didn't even send a text. I figured maybe she didn't know. Or didn't care. Either way, I didn't give her the chance. I started working right out of school, small firm, small paychecks, but it was mine. I shared a one-bedroom apartment with a busted heater and neighbors who thought quiet hours were a myth. But slowly, things started to change. Promotions came. Raises followed. At 29, I made it to senior project manager. I bought my first place, modest, clean, something I could finally call my own. And then, 3 months ago, Uncle Rick mentioned he'd run into my mom at a cousin's wedding. I told her about your new role, he said, smiling. Figured she might reach out and congratulate you. I didn't respond. I just changed the subject. I should have known. Because 2 weeks later, she showed up at my door. With Ted. They looked older. Tired. But not the kind of tired that comes from working late. The kind that comes from watching a foundation crack beneath you. I thought maybe they were here to apologize. To say they were wrong. To say they miss me. Nope. She smiled, fake as tinsel. We heard about the promotion, she said, eyes already scanning my apartment like it belonged to her. So proud of you. Then Ted added, the twins are getting ready to apply to college. It's been tough financially. We were hoping you could help. I blinked. I asked, help how? And she said it like she was doing me a favor. We just thought it'd be meaningful if you contributed to their tuition. You know, since you turned out okay. Turned out okay. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe she was kidding. I waited for a punchline. There wasn't one. They sat there, comfortably, talking about how the kids deserved a chance. How family supports each other. How this could be your way of giving back. They even said, you should be proud to give them what we couldn't give you. I stared at them, numb, then said one word. No. That's when the gaslighting began. The accusations. The guilt trips. She said I was being cruel. Ted said I was letting bitterness cloud my judgment. My mother even said, I raised you alone for years, Marcus. This is how you thank me? But I saw it for what it was, a transaction. They saw my success not as my victory, but as their opportunity. And I wasn't going to let them cash in. What they didn't know is that I remembered everything. Every insult, every dismissal, every moment I begged to stay and they turned their backs. And now they had the audacity to act like I owed them something? That's when I told them to leave. But that wasn't the end. Because what she did next crossed a line I never thought she'd dare to touch. When I was 16, the night after they told me I had to leave, I sat in my grandparents' guest room with all my clothes stuffed into garbage bags and my heart crushed into pulp. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the ceiling and wondered how someone could look their own child in the eye and tell them, calmly, that they didn't belong. That night, I remember something else, too. A photo. It used to hang in the hallway of our old apartment, a snapshot of me at age 7, missing a front tooth, holding up a wonky art project like I'd just painted the Sistine Chapel. The day before I moved out, I went back to the house to grab a book I'd left behind. And that photo? Gone. Replaced by an ultrasound picture of the twins. It was like I'd never existed. That memory came rushing back after my mom and Ted left my apartment, still indignant that I wouldn't fund their precious kid's future. At first, I thought that was the end of it. But a few days later, I got an email. From her. A 3-paragraph essay titled, "Things You Seem to Forget," complete with bullet points listing the sacrifices she'd made. As a single mother. Paragraph 2 was especially theatrical, about how she chose not to demand child support so I wouldn't grow up watching my parents hate each other. Paragraph 3 ended with, "All I'm asking is for you to be generous the way I once was for you." Generous? Like kicking me out and replacing me with 2 babies? I ignored the message. Blocked the email. Then she made a new account. 3 days later, another email. "This is your last chance to do the right thing before I really have to ask for help." I didn't know what that meant at first. But I would soon. 2 weeks passed, and life almost felt normal again. I buried myself in work, avoided family functions, kept my head down. Then, on a Wednesday morning, I got a call from my receptionist at the office. "There's a woman downstairs," she said, voice low and uneasy. "She says she's your mother and won't leave until you speak with her." My stomach dropped. I wasn't even in the office. I'd taken a sick day and was working from home. But the idea that she had shown up at my workplace, uninvited, unhinged, and unannounced, sent a cold shiver through me. I told the receptionist to put her on the phone. When I spoke, I kept my voice low and sharp. "You need to leave. Now. If you try anything here, I will press charges. And believe me, I will make sure you never get a single cent from me for the rest of your life." She laughed, and said, "Don't be so dramatic. I just want to talk." Talk? No. She wanted a scene. A power play. She wanted to make me look like the cruel, ungrateful son who shut the door on family while she stood outside in the rain, halo glowing. I told her plainly, "You're broke. You can't afford a lawsuit. I suggest you don't push this any further." It must have worked, because 10 minutes later the receptionist texted to say she'd finally left. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. I called my lawyer the next day. Explained everything. Asked what my options were: restraining orders, cease and desists, whatever legal wall I could put between her and my peace. But I didn't even get the chance to act fast enough. Because 2 nights later, she was waiting for me outside my apartment. I was coming home from work, tired and craving silence, when I spotted her sitting on the steps like she owned the place. As soon as she saw me, she stood, marched toward me, and shoved me back before I could even speak. My phone flew from my hands. She was screaming, about how I'd ruined everything. That I was selfish. That all her suffering had been for nothing. Then she started swinging. She hit me in the chest, tried to claw at my face. I was so stunned I didn't even move for the first few seconds. But when I finally grabbed her wrists and pushed her back, my voice came out in a roar I didn't know I had. "Get away from me." The neighbors heard. One of them came running, phone already dialing 911. Within minutes the cops were there, pulling her off me while she kept yelling that I was the one who had abandoned his family. I pressed charges. I had to. There was no other choice. Not anymore. Turns out, her life really had fallen apart. Ted had moved out the day after she stormed my workplace, apparently sick of her meltdowns. He took the twins and went to stay with his parents. I found out from my grandmother that she'd also been banned from family gatherings after screaming at my grandfather about raising an ungrateful spawn. I should have felt sorry for her. I didn't. Because every choice she made, every lie, every manipulation, every rejection, was a brick in the wall between us. And now that wall was complete. Unscalable. Permanent. And I was finally on the other side, free. The week after the attack felt like breathing underwater, slow, muffled, surreal. I filed for the restraining order immediately. My lawyer assured me we had enough evidence. Between the workplace incident, the threats, the physical assault witnessed by 3 neighbors, and the police report, it wasn't even a question. She would legally never be able to get near me again. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. For most of my life, I thought if I worked hard enough, became successful enough, good enough, she'd finally see me. But now, she couldn't even stand to see me without trying to tear me down. And I knew why, because I'd escaped her orbit. Because I'd made it without her, and that made her irrelevant. Still, the part of me that used to leave drawings on her pillow as a kid whispered, "What if this is your fault too?" So I did something weird. I booked a session with a therapist. She asked me to talk about a moment from my childhood where I felt erased. I told her about that missing photo, the one she took down when the twins were born. How one day I was 7 and smiling on the wall, and the next day I didn't exist. The therapist said something I haven't been able to forget. That was the beginning of your training, Marcus. Not to disappear, but to become someone whose worth had to be proven, not loved. It shook me. For the first time in a long time, I sat still long enough to feel everything. The grief, the loss, the rage, the helplessness of a teenager who packed his life into trash bags while his mother chose easier love. I started making a new plan, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. I needed to reclaim what she tried to take from me. And that started with my name. I filed to legally change it. First name, Marcus stays. Last name? Gone. Gone like the photo. Gone like the dinners they never invited me to. Gone like the kid they told didn't deserve to stay. I went through my finances too. I'd done well. I wasn't rich, but I'd invested, saved smart, and was sitting on enough to buy a new place. A fresh start. Away from the ghosts. A few days later, I toured a house on the other side of town. It was quiet, a little rundown, but had great bones. And a long front porch, perfect for late nights and healing. I signed the papers the same day the restraining order was granted. Funny how something so final can feel like air. But I wasn't done yet. See, there was still one person in my family I hadn't talked to about everything, Uncle Rick. The one who co-signed my loan. The one who told my mother about my promotion. I invited him to lunch. He looked sheepish when he arrived, holding a peace offering, a bottle of whiskey and a "Sorry I messed up" card from a gas station. "I swear, Marcus," he said before we even sat down, "I thought she'd be happy for you. I didn't know how bad things were between you two. I didn't know she'd do all that." I studied his face. His eyes were bloodshot, probably from worry, or maybe guilt. But they weren't lying. "I know," I said. "You messed up. But you're the only reason I got to college. You believed in me when no one else did." His shoulders dropped like I'd handed him a pardon. And then I told him the next thing. "I've set up a trust," I said. "Half of it's for my future kids, if I ever have them. The other half is going to help kids like me. No parents. No safety net. I'm funding a scholarship in my grandparents' name." He blinked. "Wow. That's big. Someone has to break the cycle," I said. "Might as well be me." He clinked his glass against mine. "Proud of you, kid." More than I ever said out loud. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without checking the locks twice. But the story doesn't end there. Because a week later, something happened that I never expected, something that brought it all full circle in a way that made my blood run cold. My mother showed up again. Not at my house. Not at my job. At my grandparents'. It was a Sunday. I had just finished sealing boxes for my upcoming move, fresh start, new home, clean slate. I'd packed everything carefully, photo albums, awards, books that reminded me I'd built a life with no handouts. Then I got the call. Grandma. Her voice was shaking. "Marcus, she came here." I sat down hard on the armrest of my couch. Who? She didn't even have to answer. My mom had shown up at my grandparents' porch like some kind of repentant ghost. But she wasn't there to apologize. No, she was there to plead. Apparently Ted had left for good. The twins weren't speaking to her after she'd had a breakdown and tried to demand money from their teachers for emotional support labor. Yes, seriously. She told Grandma that Marcus poisoned them. Against her, that I had turned everyone away. She's unraveling, Grandma said quietly. But she's also dangerous. And that's when I decided. No more middle ground. No more hoping she'd get better. No more ignoring, no more blocking, no more waiting for her to change. I was done. I drove over. She was still there, standing outside like she was waiting to be let in. She looked smaller somehow, no makeup, sweatpants, wild hair, but her eyes hadn't changed. Still calculating. Still waiting to flip the script and become the victim. When she saw me pull up, her face lit up with this twisted kind of hope. Marcus, she said, stepping toward me. Please, let's talk. I raised my hand. No. She stopped. Her mouth fell open. Like she truly didn't expect me to reject even this. You don't get to come back here, I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. You don't get to manipulate the only people who still let you exist in their world. She flinched, but I didn't stop. You didn't raise me. You disposed of me. And the only reason you're here now is because you've run out of people to use. You don't understand, she whispered, stepping forward again. No. You don't understand. You kicked me out at 16 because you said I didn't deserve to stay. So you don't deserve my help. You don't deserve my money. And you sure as hell don't deserve this family. She tried to cry then. Even dropped to her knees. I made mistakes, Marcus. But I'm still your mother. I didn't move. You were my mother, I said coldly. And you fired yourself? I walked past her and up the porch stairs to my grandparents, who had stepped outside by then. I looked at Grandma. I need you to come inside now. We shut the door behind us. I made sure it locked. The next morning, I had the lawyer file paperwork to put a no-contact clause into effect for any communication, digital, physical, or through third parties. We added Grandma and Grandpa to the protection clause. Then I sent her one final email. Simple. Short. I owe you nothing. Do not contact me again. Any attempt to do so will be pursued legally. You were the reason I succeeded, because you made me survive without you. I clicked send. Then archived every message, every photo, every trace of her I had left. And for the first time in my life, I felt light. She taught me what family isn't. What love isn't. And now, every good thing I build from here on out will be because I decided to stop bleeding for people who'd never lift a finger for me. She created this fire in me. But I chose what to burn.